We have talked about treating the foreigners amongst us. We've talked about people who are on SNAP benefits. And we've talked about minimizing people and dehumanizing people. And we've talked about feeding people and all that kind of stuff. Well, this next thing, I promise, I think it's really interesting how it intersects. I hope it's interesting how it intersects. The lieutenant governor from Indiana recently was talking about Zoran Mamdani before the election. And one of the things he said is that Mamdani wants to force his values on the people of New York. This guy running for mayor wants to force his values on the people of New York, and he has no right to do that. Now, the guy's name is Beckwith, and Lieutenant Governor Beckwith. Beckwith goes on to explain why. And the reason why is because the United States was formed as this and it was formed as that. And he uses a whole bunch of garbage history, and how America was always a Christian nation, came from Christian nation. Jesus himself was one of the signatories of the Declaration of Independence, and so on and so forth. And that's why a guy like Mamdani has no right to share to force his values on anybody, because his values are the values of a Muslim and a socialist. And America was founded as a Christian capitalist nation. So if you're a socialist, you got nothing to say. You got nothing of value. You cannot force those values on you. You have no right to force those values on you. If you're a Muslim, you have no right to force those values. I think you'd probably say the same thing. Well, you might not say the same thing about an atheist, because I think people like him are generally terrified of Muslims and of other faiths, especially when those people are prominent, right? Anyhow, the concept here, of course, and I've explained it to you before, I'm always fascinated by the word values. What do you mean when you say values? And what do you mean when you say Christian values? What do you mean when you say American values? What do you mean when you say Canadian values? What does that mean exactly? Like, don't just tell me that Mamdani is going to force his values on New Yorkers. What values are you talking? Well, socialist values. No. I want to know the details. I want the specifics. What values exactly are you worried that he is going to force on to New Yorkers? What values specifically do you believe that are so sacrosanct that they mustn't ever be approached? They mustn't ever be touched. They mustn't be questioned. What American, New York, what Indiana, what Christian values are so sacred? So sacred that they are just absolutely untouchable. Mustn't be touched. Don't even look at them. If you look at them the wrong way, you'll change them. And we just cannot have, what is it? Man, like when I hear these kinds of statements, what is it that you are so afraid? What is it exactly are you so afraid will change? What are you so scared of losing? Because to be quite honest, I've listened to Mamdani talk, and I've heard all kinds of really stupid things said about him as well. I'm impressed with some of the things that he's offering. And some of the things that he's offering that apparently a lot of New Yorkers are really excited about because they made him mayor. But a lot of those things they're going to benefit the lives of the everyday person on the street. They're going to benefit the vast majority of people while causing a little bit of an expense to a tiny minority of the people of the city. I don't see it as horrible. I don't see it as a bad thing that he wants to make it, to make going to work more affordable to people. I don't see it as a bad thing that he wants to make eating more affordable for people, that he wants to make rent more affordable to the everyday New Yorker. I don't see that. I don't see it as a bad thing that he's saying the richest among us have to dig in and pay a little bit more for those who can't pitch in as much. I don't see that as a bad thing. I see all of those things really sort of, not really sort of, I see all of those things as, I don't see those things as troubling. I don't see those things as scary. I see those things as hopeful. I wish that we would do those kinds of things here in my city. I see some of the things that he was talking about, especially when it comes to making the lives of the everyday citizen easier and more affordable. Those are the kinds of things that a Christian should stand up to offer. I love them. I would preach from a foundation. Like I do preach from a foundation that says something very similar. We are supposed to provide for our neighbors. We are to endeavor to provide for our neighbors. So I don't understand what Lieutenant Governor Beckwith is worried about when he talks about Mamdani is going to force his values onto New Yorkers. I do, however, have an issue. Let me put it, I'm much more. I have a great deal more trepidation in my heart for the values that modern day Christians are espousing. I'm much more terrified. I'm much more worried about the values that modern day Christians are trying to force on us. I'm much more afraid of the values that modern day Christians are proclaiming. I really am. I'm much more worried about Christians who are trying to promote that it's okay for people to go hungry. That not only is it okay, it's biblically sound that we let people go hungry. I'm much more worried about Christians who are okay with and support violence against anybody, against people. I'm much more worried about those Christians who say things like Lindsey Graham the other day said how the United States was killing all the right people. And then went on to talk about how the Jewish and Christian leaders in the room should blah, 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 blah. I'm much more worried about Christians who glorify death and destruction and pass that off as a good, godly, Christ-like thing. I'm much more concerned by Christians who dehumanize their neighbors, their brothers and sisters. I am much more afraid of Christians who try to pass along a value that would instruct and reinforce that some members of our society are of more value than others based on things like gender. Or I'm much more concerned by Christians who would pass along values that there are some among us who don't deserve to live because of who they love. So I'm really confused. Lieutenant Governor Beckwith, and anybody out there who says I'm afraid of the values that Zoran Mamdani is trying to force on New Yorkers, I'm really confused by which of his stated values you're so desperately afraid of and why. And I am much more afraid right now. I'm much more afraid of the quote unquote Christian values that are propagating and spreading in our world that are completely counter to the teachings of Jesus Christ, but yet are being held up as gospel. Completely counter to the teachings of Jesus Christ, but yet are being held up as the truly, genuinely loving thing loving way forward. It doesn't matter if a person is Muslim or Hindu or atheist or Baha'i. It doesn't matter if a person is a Christian or it doesn't matter which denomination. It doesn't matter where a person comes from. It doesn't matter what a person's beliefs are. If those values that they espouse are about making people's lives better, if the values that they espouse are values that if enacted would help people to grow, to help people prosper, to improve their lives, then those are godly values. The values we need to worry about are the values that are espoused that would separate us, that would divide us, that would tell us that some are worthy and some are not. The values that would tell us that some are deserving of our love and our assistance and our provision, some are deserving of our sacrifice, and some are not. The values that we should be most concerned with are the ones that tell us that we are somehow the center of the universe and all that we should consider first and foremost before thinking of others. The values that we should be worried about are values that would call us away from community, away from providing for others, away from loving others, away from welcoming and including others, the values that would call us away from things like justice and from things like equity and equality and mercy. And right now, the loudest voices proclaiming those kinds of values belong to people like me. People who claim to be followers of Jesus Christ. No. Please, we want people to share values of love and inclusion. What we should be terrified of are people who are sharing values that lead us in another direction. Don't be afraid of love. Don't be afraid of love. Amen.